Alright, guys, welcome to the second episode of the Intersect project. I have decided, based on downloads and your guys' participation, that I would like to do more of these episodes for you guys. And if I'm going to fill you in on a little secret, I was going to do more episodes anyway. But thanks to those who have listened so far, and thanks to those who might listen in the future. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a podcast for every episode of Chuck. And there's two ways I can go about this. The first way is releasing it on a weekly schedule, one podcast episode a week over the episode at hand. But the problem with that is I go back to college for my junior year in a couple of weeks. So and I'm trying to get an engineering degree. So that takes up a lot of time. So, I mean, to not sound selfish, because that's not at all how I want to come across. But I'm also, if I want to do the weekly thing, I'm going to need a more consistent fan base. And by fan base, I don't mean more people just like throwing themselves at the show, but like more listeners. I'm just going to need some more incentive, I guess, to do it on a weekly basis. And the second option is to just release them when I can, which I don't really like because it doesn't give you guys like a heads up that an episode's coming. Like if I have them set once a week, it's like, hey, all right, this Tuesday there's going to be an episode because he releases them every Tuesday or something like that. Instead, I'd be doing like, hey, it's been 2 months. Here's another episode, guys. I don't enjoy that. I don't like it when people do that. I like more consistent schedules, and I would like to do that. But like I said, an engineering degree is a lot of work, and that's a lot of time. So I need more incentive, I guess, to release on a weekly schedule. And I don't know. It's just I don't want to sound like arrogant or self-centered. It's just I do have things I needed to take care of too. Hopefully you guys understand that. Well, Chucksters and newbies, we've made it to the second episode, Chuck versus the helicopter. It's a good episode. But before we get to the episode, I want to do a little thank yous. First off, I want to thank Chuckaholics.com for supporting the podcast enough to endorse it on their website. Thank you very much for that. And then, last but not least, I'd like to thank, obviously, all the people that have listened. Because without you guys, this podcast wouldn't exist. Or it would, but it'd be kind of weird that I made a podcast and no one listened to it. So thank you guys for listening to this podcast. Okay, let's delve into this podcast. We're talking about Chuck versus the helicopter, which is the second episode of the series altogether. And it's a fairly good episode. It's not a filler episode, which is important. I think the podcast episodes for the filler episodes are probably going to be a little bit shorter than the other ones, but this is not. This is an important plot mover for the TV series, so it won't be a short podcast because there's a lot to delve into. And the first thing I'd like to delve into about this episode is the changes everybody has to go through. And it's not just Chuck going through all these changes. It's the whole team. Casey and Sarah. They're both having major changes in their life. Alright, so we'll look at them one at a time. I'll start with Casey. Casey, his change is pretty big. It may not seem like it. He's just going from a secret agent, or he's just doing a job pretending to do something. But it's a major change. John Casey is a cold-blooded killer. He is a NSA assassin. He has killed not diplomats. Maybe he has. He's possibly killed diplomats. He's certainly killed other assassins. And it's just he has to go from that to a buy more employee. He has to go from taking out killers and defending his country to stocking the shelves at a buy more with appliances. and selling those appliances at the same time. That's a huge change for someone who's mentally wired to literally kill people. You can't just go from being wired to shoot somebody all the way into being wired to like just sell stuff. That's a huge change for somebody. Especially Casey, who is not a big fan of change. Chuckaholics know what I'm talking about. Newbies, you'll find out. He is not a big change person. And that's a spoiler, I guess, a little bit, but not really. Alright. So that deals with Casey's change. Now let's go to Sarah's change. She's going from a CIA badass to a wienerlicious girl. She makes hot gourmet wieners, as it's put. She makes hot dogs now. She doesn't. She's also watching Chuck, but she is also having to make wieners, gourmet wieners. That's a terrible change for someone who's supposed to be saving the world on a daily basis as a CIA agent. That is a huge change. Why? Yeah, I would. Yeah, how would you not go from? How would you not just be questioning everything right there? I mean, obviously the mission's important, and she's got to keep an eye. But ask for something. You probably ask for something a little bit better besides Wienerlicious. I mean, that is just a. Who wants to work at a Wienerlicious? Gross. Okay, so That's Sarah's change. So let's talk about Chuck's change. And obviously, a lot of his change delves from last episode, where is a buy more employee, works 11, 12 bucks an hour, fixing computers and stuff, tech support, and he is now the Intersect. He has government secrets in his head that change lives. And as we learned today in this episode, or as we learned in this episode, those secrets are worth a lot to a lot of people, as Dr. Zarno put it. So I mean, he is literally and okay, plus the changes he's having to deal with two handlers who also need handling. They don't I mean, look at what Casey did at the beginning of the episode. He literally ran down a shoplifter. Ran him down, found him, tackled him while he's shoplifting, and took the thing. He had to chase him, so he made sure Casey would not kill him. That's some pretty big handling on Chuck's self. He has to handle these guys while they're handling him, making sure he's not dying. He's got to make sure they don't kill people. It's just I mean, it's terrible. I mean, plus he's got to deal with having to respond, at least respond, not really is what I'm looking for, but he's got to learn how to work with both Sarah and Casey, and it's not a small task. I mean, he's got to go from dealing with nobody except maybe Henry Tang and Big Mike to dealing with those two and Casey and Sarah telling him what to do, what not to do, and trying to keep him from killing himself while trying to save the world all at once. It's a tall order for anybody, let alone a guy who has not had any experience, at least we'll put it that way. So that deals with all the changes that the characters have gone through. So let's delve into some of the major plot themes of this episode. And the big one I want to talk about is distrust. And this episode is chock full of distrust. It's a it's a three-ring circus of distrust. We'll put it that way. Chuck doesn't trust Casey and Sarah don't trust each other. Casey doesn't trust Chuck. It's a smorgasbord of distrust. And I'd like to discuss that for a little bit. First off, we'll go from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode. So I'll try and go in order of distrust. So to begin the distrust, it's It really starts when Casey comes and talks to Chuck about Dr. Zarno's car blowing up by an NSA incinerator and him being dead. And if you don't know what I'm doing air quotes around dead. Because as we find out later, he is not dead. Again, this is not a spoiler, because as I've said before, you should probably watch the episode beforehand. That's why it's a rewatch. But anyway, back to the point. Dr. Zarno is dead, and they found an NSA incinerator. And Casey automatically goes to uh, he automatically thinks that Sarah did it because he didn't do it, obviously, or well, he knows he didn't do it because he is himself, so he knows he didn't do it. So what does he do? He goes, talks to Chuck, tells him he has to stop having private meetings with Sarah, which is pretty tough because it's hard to say no to a private conversation with her, but that's besides the point. And so I mean, he's trying to wrap his head around if Sarah did this or not, and he's trying to keep Chuck in the dark about it. What does Chuck do? First chance he gets, goes and visits Sarah at the Wienerlicious alone. And that leads us to the distrust between that keeps us in the distrust between Casey and Sarah, but it moves us from the distrust. It moves us into the zone of distrust between Chuck and Casey, and that delves into cars exploding and whatnot. But anyway, we find out the incinerator's an NSA incinerator, so Chuck obviously is convinced that Casey is the guy that wants to kill him. He killed Dr. Zarno, and now he wants to kill Chuck for the secrets in his head. And if we're being honest, the first time I watched it, I was like, you know what? That's probably true. I mean, he is a cold-blooded killer. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he do this? I mean, this seems like right up his alley. So they're trying to get the crowd on the side of Sarah and Chuck in this moment. They're trying to say, yeah, this guy's a cold-blooded killer. He could easily have done this. So that's how they paint the picture. And that freaks Chuck out. And he gets scared, and he gets called to do an install job off-site. And when he gets there, he finds out, hey, guess what? Guess who called it in? Casey. Casey called it in. And you know what? He gets scared because he thinks Casey's about to kill him. And you know what? We do too. So they get into a car chase. And it's a decent car chase. I mean, it's a TV show. It's the second episode of a TV show. I mean, it's not going to be a high-budget car chase. But it's a decent car chase. By the way, car chases in TV shows, sorry for the tangent here, but car chases in TV shows they're fun, but I like them in movies better just because there's more of a budget. Because when you go into a movie knowing there's a car chase, you put a lot towards that budget. You go, all right, we're going to need a lot of money to make this part. We're going to need a lot of money we're going to have to budget a lot of money for this car chase. Hold on one second, guys. I'm going to take a drink of water. This podcast work makes you very thirsty. You got to keep the throat from being dry so you can't so I can talk correctly. But anyway, yeah. So car chase movies with car chases are pretty cool. I like car chases in movies. I'm a big fan of them. But anyway, back to my original point. They're doing the car chase, obviously, and in that car chase, Chuck's freaking out, obviously, because he thinks Casey's trying to kill him. And you know what? We all would. So they finally come to a stopping point, and Casey pit maneuvers him, which is pretty cool. I like that ending. He pit maneuvers him, and when that happens, Chuck gets out of the car, which I think is a terrible idea. If you think someone's gonna kill him, why would you hop out of the car and scream at him? Are you crazy? That is just a dumb idea. You should not do that. If any of you guys listening to this podcast ever get into a car chase and the guy chasing you think is going to kill you, don't ever, when you crash, get out of the car and scream at him, are you crazy? Because 9 times out of 10, they probably are. That's why they're doing this. So that's some advice from your good pal Paul. Don't do it. But anyway, so they start talking. Casey starts telling him that he's innocent, and he has no idea. He's like starts telling him you can buy an NSA incinerator anywhere on the black market, and it just so I mean Chuck goes, well, okay, yeah, okay, so you are innocent, and now the distrust shifts from the distrust. Sorry, guys, shifts from uh this is Chuck to Casey, from Chuck to Casey to Chuck to Sarah, and the distrust between Casey and Sarah increases a lot. So okay. So at one point, the distrust between the two is so big that they fight each other. Before this, they fight each other. The distrust between Casey and Sarah is so great they literally go to blows in the Wienerlicious. They fight in the Wienerlicious, and not all of it's videotaped, but teenage boys come in and they videotape part of it, and Casey escapes. And that's why he meets with Chuck at the offsite install. But I mean, they fought each other. That's how distrust. That's how much distrust is in this group. They didn't just talk it out like normal human beings and solve the problem. They fought each other, which goes a long way in the theme of this show, if you know that nonviolence can be very helpful, which is a major theme in the show. Spoiler alert, sorry. But anyway, back to the distress shifting back from Chuck to Casey to Chuck to Sarah. So anyway, now the trust is not with Chuck on Sarah's side, even though she directly told him on that beach previous episode, "Hey, trust me. Do it. Trust me." To be fair, I mean, she saved his life, yes, but I mean, he's so new to the CIA game. He asking him to just trust a bunch of people it's pretty tough. So I'm gonna cut him some slack. Although I would probably trust her. I mean, obviously you gotta trust her. She seemed like she had the best intentions, but I mean, obviously, uh, you can't just trust people. It doesn't. You gotta earn trust. So I mean, she. It's. I'm not gonna totally fault Chuck for not trusting her the whole time, because I mean, it's a pretty stressful situation. So that distrust happens, and he goes to his house where they're supposed to have a dinner date with Ellie and Awesome and Morgan, because Morgan used his Morgan door, and Morgan never leaves the apartment, so I mean he's there all the time. But anyway, so he gets there, and the distrust greatly continues between the two. He ruins her or sorbet. I'm not very well versed in French desserts. Flambe was what Casey called it, but I don't. Souffle, I think, is what it was. Yeah, it was a chocolate souffle. I don't know what souffle is, by the way. Maybe I'll look it up after this. Actually, I'm probably going to look it up after this because, I mean, what is a souffle? It's piqued my interest. Anyway, so I mean, he ruins the souffle. They talk it out. She's like, "Well, how could you not trust me?" And then, in a brief moment, Eureka! Boom! Eureka! It hits her. She figures out what's going on. And she runs outside to go fix it. And Chuck and Casey follow her because they all realize that, guess what? They're all on the same side again. So they get together and they go outside, and she gets attacked by Dr. Zarno back from the dead. It's like a Twilight Zone episode. By the way, I'm gonna shamelessly plug Twilight Zone because that's a great show. It's not Chuck. I mean, obviously I have a little more love for Chuck because I'm doing a podcast about it. But if you haven't watched an episode of the Twilight Zone, I highly recommend you watch an episode. It's very good. It's a very good TV show, and it influenced a lot of people. But anyway, back to the show. It matters. Chuck. So they go after her. They chase her down to the port of LA, and the distrust continues. Yay! More distrust. You get distrust. You get distrust. Everybody gets distrust. And that's basically how this episode goes. So they rescue her, obviously. They obviously rescue her. And Chuck is in a helicopter. Guess what? No one trusts Chuck to land a helicopter. Even Chuck doesn't trust Chuck to land a helicopter, which is fair enough. Anyway, at the end, when he finally lands the helicopter, they get together, and this distrust culminates into this huge argument between Chuck and Sarah. And she's like, "I told you to trust me," and he's like, "Well, I should have." And he's fretting about, he's timid about the argument because obviously he likes her a lot, as you can tell by the many times he goes, "Well, if our relationship was, even remotely real." Says it twice in the episode, by the way. But he obviously likes her, so her literally yelling at him for not trusting her is scaring the daylights out of him. He really likes her, and this is not how he wants stuff to go down. I almost cursed. I'm sorry if I throw in a curse word here every now and then, but I'm not a proponent of curse words, but I have a curse jar. I probably should use a curse jar. But anyway, sorry for the tangent once again. So back to the original point is this culmination of distrust explodes in this argument. She is literally just tearing Chuck a new one, yelling at him, telling you didn't trust me, this and this, and she's right. He didn't trust her. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to totally fault him for not trusting her, but she did save your life. So I mean, you kind of should have trusted her a little bit more than thinking she would poison your family. You probably should put a little more trust in her. So that happens, and then they make up at the end, and trust is once again back in the circle of Team Bartowski. Or is it? Because as we saw at the end of the episode, when John Casey was told that the Intersect is almost done. And when that Intersect is finished, he'll do what he's meant to do. And we all know what he's meant to do. He's meant to kill people. And there's only one person that they shouldn't, not that they should have to kill, but there's only one person that they would probably order to kill in this case. And that's old Chuck. Yeah. Casey was ordered. Casey was pretty much directly ordered, hey, when this new Intersect is built, you're going to have to off Chuck. And that is a huge distrust. Now, if Chuck finds out about it, we'll find we'll see if Chuck finds out about it. I mean, Chuckaholics know, obviously. Chucksters know, but I mean newbies don't. But you'll find out, and obviously through the rest of the season, which is a good season by the way. They're all good seasons. But so yeah, Casey was told directly by General Beckman, hey, when this Intersect project's done, put a bullet in his brain. Some dark stuff. Dark stuff. Alright, so now let's go to what I thought was the most hilarious part of the episode. The actual landing of the helicopter by Chuck. So, he's in the helicopter. He has shot the pilot with a trank gun, because that's how Chuck rolls. And he has tussled with Dr. Zarno to the point where when they hit something, Dr. Zarno was knocked out by a concussive blow. So Chuck's sitting there in the pilot seat. He has no idea what he's doing. He is just freaking out. And Casey calls him and starts yelling at him, adding more stress to the situation, which is always a good idea. If you're ever in a highly stressful situation, I highly suggest adding more stress. Totally should do that. It's totally helpful. Totally helpful. And that is an example of sarcasm from me. So if you hear that kind of tone of voice, that's my sarcasm. I'm not pretty good at sarcasm, but I like using sarcasm. It conveys a point that I like. But anyway, back off that tangent. Chuck is literally told to land this helicopter like he would use in an aircraft simulator. Now, you would probably think right off the bat, well, one of two things. Well, this is obviously going to work. I mean, those simulators are just top of the line. They know everything. Or, no way. there's no way a simulator would help you actually land a helicopter. And I'm here to tell you that I don't personally have experience, but I know of a person who was super into flying simulators for years, used them all the time, and he finally got his pilot's license a couple years ago. And I was talking to him, and he's like, it's very similar. Now, obviously, this is a giant difference between an airplane and a helicopter. Maybe I don't. I mean, honestly, I don't know. If you guys know, good for you. Let me know in the comments if there's a major difference between helicopters and airplanes. I think so. I would think so, but I could be wrong. If there's not, like I said, let me know in the reviews or the comments. But so he said that it's very similar from the simulator to the actual aircraft, and that the simulator really helped him. Now, I don't know if that means that he could have actually landed a helicopter or not, but it's a TV show. So I won't I won't delve deep into it, but obviously people are going to go, well, I don't know if that's possible or not. And I don't know. I don't know if he could actually, after playing a simulator that he could actually land a helicopter. But then again, it is a TV show, and it looked cool. And it did. It looked really cool. It was supposed to look cool, and it did. It looked cool. And I enjoyed it. So that's that. Now let's get to the baddie of the episode. Dun-dun-dun-dun. The baddie. Dr. Zarno, CIA doctor, who we find out has been tipping off North Korean scientists about the scientific advancements in the U.S., which is stupid. Why would you ever tip off the North Koreans? If you're going to be a baddie and sell secrets, sell them to like the Soviets or the former Soviets. If anybody's listening in Russia, I don't think you guys are Soviets. I'm sorry. But sell it to the Russians. Sell it to the Chinese. North Koreans. I mean, come on. They're not even a worthwhile enemy. They're just crazy. Or they're not crazy. They're being tortured and stuff. Sorry to get real, guys, but that's what's happening. Again, sorry to get real. But their leader's crazy. I mean, come on. So, I mean, that's just a terrible idea. And he'll go down as like a decent baddie. I mean, he's definitely just like a filler baddie. Well, like I said, it's not a filler episode. This bad guy is a filler bad guy. He's not like a major bad guy. Spoiler alert, but I mean, you kind of saw that he was arrested. You didn't see him being arrested, but it's fairly obvious he was arrested. So I mean, I like I said, I'm trying not to spoil things for you guys, but I mean, sometimes you guys gotta pick up on some context clues. So if you didn't know that he was just a filler baddie, I'm sorry for spoiling that for you, but I mean, he is. He is just a filler baddie. So he won't be like a major baddie or anything. And that, my friends, is the plot review. Not necessarily the plot review, but that's my main talk on things that occurred during the plot. Now that we're done with plot-based talkings in this, I want to delve into something about Chuck that really I think is awesome. Now, if you didn't know, Chuck was on an NBC show, and it ran for 5 seasons. It ran for 5 seasons, and there was a lot of the seasons they were at risk of cancellation. They were very close to being canceled numerous times. Especially the second. I'm pretty sure it was especially the second season when they had to have fan help using through Subway. The campaign was Subway to get Chuck back on air, and it worked obviously because we have more than 2 seasons. We have 5. But like I said, it was constantly up for cancellation, which sucks because if it would have been canceled, where would all of us Chuck fans be? What would we be doing? Just enjoying the first 2 seasons. But anyway, so I want to talk about how much steam this show has been picking up. I mean, obviously there were fans of the show that watched while it was on NBC. I personally did not, and I'm sad I didn't, but I didn't. I caught it like like a lot of the fans nowadays through Netflix, and I'm so happy that I caught it. But like, I mean, I didn't. I watched it through Netflix, not on the TV show. Now, actually, I mean, if you caught the TV show, I mean, let me know. Send me a tweet at Chuck Rewatch 33, capital C at the beginning. Send me a tweet. Tell me if you saw it on TV while it was airing, or if you caught it through Netflix like I did. And I mean, that's pretty cool. I just want to see like the numbers, because I mean, obviously there were a lot of fans that watched it, but if a lot of it, I think a lot of the fan base has come through rewatches, watching it on Netflix, Hulu, stuff like that. I want to know the numbers, because I really feel like that. I bet that Netflix outweighs it, and it's great because it's picking up steam. It's getting a huge fan base now. I think maybe one day it could go from a cult following to a big following, like something that makes it super popular. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what it could do with its newfound fame. Maybe some more bigger royalty checks for the fans through syndication. But I mean, it's a great show, and with all these fans picking up the show on Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that, I mean, it's great. Maybe we could get that movie. And ultimately, I really see a movie. I know Zach mentioned something at Nerd HQ 2014 about possibly a series in the future. I think he may have mentioned something about a series in the future. But I mean, realistically, they probably won't be able to do a series just because of their busy schedules. Like Adam Baldwin's on The Last Ship, which I highly recommend that show. I've been following it since it aired, and it is a fantastic show. And I mean, Zach and Yvonne. I mean, Zach doesn't have anything as of right now, but I mean, it's only a matter of time before he gets picked up to do another TV show or a movie or something. Because I mean, he's a fantastic actor. Yvonne she mentioned indie film coming up, and I mean, you saw her in Dexter and 24, the reboot of 24. So I mean, she is she's going places. She's definitely going places. She is a fantastic actress, and she will be going places. So I mean, realistically, I think the best we're gonna get is a movie. While I would love a series, I just think it's a little unrealistic. Not necessarily unrealistic, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to get a series than a movie. And I think we can get a movie. And I want a movie because, I mean, well, okay, I won't delve into why I want a movie because it has to deal with season 5. And Chucksters definitely know what I'm talking about. But I don't want to ruin it for any newbies. So I think we could get a movie, and I think we will get a movie. It depends on when. Alright, guys. Well, thus ends another episode of the Chuck Rewatch podcast, The Intersect Project. Thank you for listening once again. If you are listening to this, share this podcast with friends. Share it with other Chuck fans, people who've never seen Chuck. Let's share it around. I think as of this minute, as I'm like recording this podcast, I think the previous podcast, the pilot episode podcast, has like 30 something downloads, which I mean doesn't seem like a lot, but I honestly a, a guy a guy just recording a podcast in his room about Chuck, I didn't think there would be that many downloads, honestly. And 30, that's a lot of downloads. 30, I think it's actually 31, but 31 downloads, that's a lot. I mean, that's 31 people listening, and if they listen to it with other people, that's more. That's a lot of people listening to me ramble on about a TV show. And I greatly appreciate everything about this. So, I would like to thank you guys who have listened, and if you're listening right now, thank you for listening. Like I said, share it with people. Write reviews on iTunes. Tweet at me at Chuck Rewatch 33, capital C at the beginning, or just search the Intersect Project on Twitter. So I mean, follow me on Twitter. I'll post updates like when I'm recording podcasts, and I also involve myself with the discussion with the great Chuck fans on Twitter, like Chuckaholics, Richard Chuck Movie, at Chuck versus the Movie for him. JD Mitchell is one of them. I think he's also a big with the Chuckaholics website. Speaking of that, I'm actually a author on Chuckaholics website, so I'd like to thank people over there for giving me an opportunity to write about that. So that's fun. So, I mean, go check out that website, read some articles. I only have one article up right now. Well, as of recording this, I have one article right now, but by the time this episode comes out, I will write not an article, but I'll probably write something saying, "Hey, there's episode 2 out. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out." So, like I said, thank you for listening. Share it, write reviews, tweet at me, and hopefully we'll have some more and I'm going to try my best to do some podcast episodes for you guys in the future. Like I said, I mean it's going to take some participation on your guys' side for me to do it every week, but I'll try my best to do one episode a week. So, thank you. Thus ends the Intersect Project, Episode 2, Chuck versus the Helicopter.